Welcome to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast, where we focus on the people, the products, and the process of e-commerce selling today. Here's your host, Stephen Peterson.
All right, welcome back to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. And tonight we're going to take a positive approach to Amazon. This is from one of the most positive people I've ever spoken with. She's so positive, she even wrote a book about it. How to get started on Amazon. Welcome, Amy Feierman. Welcome, Amy.
Hi.
You know, you really are probably the most positive person I've ever met. You're always smiling. You're always just ready to roll. And, you know, it comes across every time I speak with you and I see you in interviews or I see you on Spreecast or what have you. Where's that come from?
The energy is just natural. My husband will call me the Energizer Bunny. I've always been full of energy, and I don't like to be a negative person. I want to just be happy in everything that I do, because when you're happy in everything that you do, the people around you are happy, and it's a much better world for everybody.
It seems to really play well in this business because, you know, if let's talk eBay for a second, right? If you believe the eBayer naysayers, you know, the world's coming to an end. Now, I'm not saying that it's a perfect system right now. I'm not thrilled the way it's going. However, you know, they're a pretty big company and they're pretty smart. I got to give them, you know, some credit for getting lots right. Not everything's wrong. And I think that positivity, you know, there's one way to look at it. Hey, my sales are low, or hey, I still have sales. What about these companies that are all going out of business because they have none?
Yeah, I totally agree. Positive energy gets you so much further in business and in life than being negative. You watch people who are constantly on forums saying bad things about eBay, bad things about Amazon, whatever, and it makes you wonder what their life is like and what their business is like. You know, how can that make you and help you go forward?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you want to be miserable, go get a job at a miserable place. And, you know, I just think that, you know, there's so much freedom that comes along with this kind of business, whether it's eBay, Amazon, Craigslist, Etsy, you know, any of those things. There's so much freedom. You can kind of create your own happiness, right?
Agreed. Totally. I mean, that's where I started from. I got laid off when I was pregnant with my son and decided I wasn't going to put up with that anymore. You know, I didn't want to be in a miserable place, and I was going to find something that was going to make me happy.
Were either of your parents entrepreneurs?
Yes. I've been part of an entrepreneurial world since I was born. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My dad is a kinetic sculptor, has been since before I was born. My mom is a jack of all trades. She was an art major, but she has done the business side for my dad. She's done blogging. She's done computer consulting. So it's a world that I grew up in. So it's kind of ingrained in me.
They must be really proud to see. You know, do you think that if they were born at this time, would they be right here alongside us selling on Amazon and eBay right from day one, or do you think they still would have went their own way?
No, I definitely think that they would be here right along with us. My dad is the early adopter in everything. If my dad had been in college 6 years later than when he would have gone the tech route, no question in my mind, and been part of the development of the technology of the 80s. He wasn't then. He came a little too early for that, and so he took it a completely different route and created art from his physics degree.
That's cool. That's just so neat to see. You know, it is, especially when you're in that environment where it's encouraged to be, you know, creative and free. I think that translates well. And I think, you know, and speaking with you over, I guess, the last year and change, I've heard you say some pretty creative things, and I think you take a pretty creative approach to the business. Where is that where your idea for a book came from?
The idea from a book is actually an interesting story. I have wanted to share all of the knowledge that I've gathered in my brain over the past 4 years. Initially, when I sat down at the end of last year, I said, I want to take all of the information I've learned about eBay and put it in a YouTube channel or whatever the format was. I hadn't figured out yet, but I knew I wanted to share. What sparked the book was actually a conversation with Chris Green. When I bought Online Arbitrage, I signed up for my half-an-hour coaching call, and I'm not sure we talked anything about Online Arbitrage in that entire hour call we had. We talked a lot about my story, and he put in my brain the idea of I needed to put my story out there. I needed to write a book. And Chris tells a lot of people that they need to write a book, that everybody has a good book in them, and I don't disagree. And that was what launched the endeavor to write the book to share my story.
And that's how you started the book. But I think one of the cool things, and I've already had your accountability partner on an interview, I think one of the coolest things that you have done and Kristen has done is you hold each other accountable. You truly set pretty high expectations for each other, and you help each other attain them. I think that is just a wonderful thing, and I think that's the first nugget for tonight, is you really do need help. I mean, do you think you would have finished it on your own if she wasn't pushing you?
Nope. I know I wouldn't have. It was that constant, every couple of days, how much have you written? What'd you write? What are you doing on it now? That made me push through it and finish it. I'm not saying I never would have done it, but I wouldn't have done it in 6 months. There's no way.
Hey, and I think she's made it sharper, correct? I mean, I'm sure she's given you feedback along the way as you've asked for it.
Yes. She has helped make it what it is, because I'll tell you, the outline that I started with is nowhere near what the book became. It's so much better because of the input that I've gotten.
And up until last year, because I met both of you guys in person, that was the first time you guys have actually met face-to-face, correct?
Correct.
So you found an accountability partner through this massive internet and made a connection and made probably a great friendship, what I would see is a great friendship, but you actually made a partner in some way without ever meeting them face-to-face, so the excuse, oh, I don't have time, oh, I can't find anybody, oh, I don't know where to look, really is just an excuse.
It's just an excuse. The reason I met Kristen online at first was because of a piece of advice somebody gave me. I don't remember who it was. I read it on a forum or in a book somewhere that if you see and know where you want to go, find somebody who's already gotten there or been there and done that and reach out to them. And I saw Kristen on Scanner Monkey. I also saw her on her first Spreecast that she did. And I saw what she was doing with her business, and I said, I want to talk to her. We scheduled a call not that much longer after her first Spreecast, and the rest is history.
It's such a great story. And, I really want to get into the book because I had read an early advance copy, and I was blown away with the level of detail. So let me take us in a break, and when we come back, I want to go through the book and talk about some specifics in there and how what I see is a perfect opportunity to use the book along with the training videos that Amazon has just put out there to really get started from day one. Okay, so let's take a break. We'll be right back. Today's podcast is brought to you by Seller Essentials, essential business solution for online sellers. Whether you sell general merchandise on Amazon or eBay, private label your own product, or if your focus is selling books, wholesale products, or liquidation lots, let Seller Essentials be your online resource for all things e-commerce. Essential resources, essential solutions, Seller Essentials, the Internet's premier venue for online professional. Visit selleressentials.com for more information. That's selleressentials.com. In this part of the podcast, we're going to spend a lot of time going through Amy's new book. So I am going to take you through it, but I think there's a great reason. In an upcoming interview, you're going to hear a gentleman speak about using Chris Green's book, Arbitrage, as a way to introduce people to FBA. We all have people that say, oh man, that just looks easy, selling on Amazon. Boy, I want to do it too. Well, most people just say that. They really don't want to work. And so he suggests giving them Chris Green's book, and if they actually take action with it, then you spend the time to show them how to do it. Don't do it up front. Well, I think that's a great example. Right after Chris Green's book, and they come back to you and they're ready to act, this book from Amy, Amazon FBA Launchpad, is a great way to bring them to the next level. She gets into details. She's going to help them understand what it is versus eBay. She's going to help walk them through the details. Now, add the Amazon training videos that Amazon just recently released, and you've got the full package. Your time will be better spent on real issues rather than saying, here's the size tape you need to get. You really shouldn't be answering those questions. So let's get into the podcast. All right, we're back, and we're talking with Amy Feierman, and we're talking, before we went to break, we were talking about partnerships and accountability partners, and how really Amy was able to take advantage of that, and it really helped propel her, as she says. And so the name of the book is the Amazon FBA Launchpad here, and I'm interested to hear some specifics about the book. Again, I read it earlier, way before it came out, and I was blown away with the level of detail. Now, since the book has come out, Amazon has come out with training videos, and I'm thinking, man, you get it in writing, you get it in videos. They didn't have this stuff when I started way back. I'm an old man, but it was just terrific to see this. So let's just talk about some specifics in the book. Take us to chapter 1. Do I have to be an experienced Amazon seller to start with this book, or?
You need to be somebody who has either never heard of Amazon or who has heard of it but hasn't taken the leap to join to really get everything out of my book. The first chapter talks through the differences between Amazon as a selling platform and other selling platforms like eBay that's out there, to really help people understand why it's important to sell on a platform like Amazon.
All right, let's pause there a second. So if I'm on eBay, and I think this is the natural, what I have seen, the natural transition for people, right? They start on eBay, they dabble in eBay, and they get some level of success, but then it gets to be kind of a lot of work with packing and shipping and taking pictures and all that kind of jazz. And then they hear of Amazon, and they're like, well, and then they sell a book or two, Merchant Fulfilled, and they hear of this FBA thing, and it is kind of overwhelming. So you're able to take and say, hey, here's how you do it on eBay, and here's how it would work in Amazon, right?
Correct. Exactly.
I think that's such a big thing, because I think people are overwhelmed. And, if you hear Chris talk about it, Chris will tell you it's easy to sell on Amazon. It really is easy to sell on Amazon. It's not necessarily easy to buy good things to sell on Amazon. There is some art and science. You got to go through that learning curve that everybody else does. But just understanding the basics, I think, is really important, because there's so many people who want to dip their toe in the water. And so you're suggesting that this book is a great place to start.
It's a great place to start because it gives you the basics. It gives you the understanding. It helps you set everything up. It helps you find inventory. And then it walks you step by step through the process of sending in your first shipment, which I think, and I know from personal experience, was one of the biggest challenges for me, was being able to get over all of those little hiccups along the way to actually send in my first box. I think my first box took me about a month to send in, and a lot of that was fear and uncertainty and unknowing. And the book is really trying to help people overcome those fears and concerns and get them moving forward faster than I did.
It's funny when I look in some of the Facebook groups and I see somebody, and Scanner Monkey is a good place where you'll see this, says, hey, I sent my first box in, and it is kind of, it does give you a little bit of a sparkle when you think about, wow, think about how far you've come, right? But those days were pretty exciting. So imagine those people. I get excited for them.
Yes, I totally agree. I remember when my first item sold, I was like, oh, this really works. I remember the first time I sold something on eBay, on auction. I remember the thrill of that. It was the same thing when I sent in my first item into Amazon. And I got the same thrill when I sold my first book.
I think the next section of the book really takes and gets you into some of the real specifics. And I think that's another place people can get mired down. So first off, they get mired down. They don't understand what this FBA versus eBay and that the difference is, right? So we've already answered those questions. Next section of the book takes us into some specifics. Let's talk a little bit about that.
All right, we'll talk about the second part of the book is really walking you through how to start on Amazon. Simple as that. You know, if you've never set up an account, I mean, a lot of people sold textbooks in college. I mean, that's why I had an Amazon selling account. I sold my textbooks from college on Amazon, and I forgot I even had that. So to be successful on Amazon, you really need to prepare yourself, and it's not just setting up an account. It's making sure you have an account set up in the right way that works best for what you're attempting to do. It's finding inventory. Now, finding inventory is it's a science, it's an art, and it takes time to learn how to do it properly. And there's a lot of resources out there. I walk you through walking through your house to try and find inventory. That's how I started. My first box was books and DVDs and miscellaneous games from my game cabinet.
I think those are great examples, and I think that's takes away that intimidation, right? By saying, hey, go look at the games in your closet. You mean there's a value there?
And that's the thing. When you're selling on eBay, I would go to yard sales and look at things, and that ugly white elephant sitting in the corner is probably going to sell for good money on eBay. It's a little bit different on Amazon, but once you understand the process, once you have the tools in place, it becomes a lot easier. I walk you through the tools you need, and there really are only a few that you need to actually get started. You don't need to spend an insane amount of money to start the process of selling on Amazon.
Do you recommend that new sellers start in a category they know and stay in it and try? I mean, because I see the shiny object syndrome and the people jumping around. Hey, I need to do wholesale. Hey, wait, no, now I need to do private label. Wait, no, I got to go back and I got to do liquidation. And I should be out at ASD right now. Oh my God, I'm missing it. What do you recommend for people?
You need to start with something that you're familiar with. Do you know makeup really well? You've been wearing it forever. Do you start in toys because you have kids? That's where I started. I started in toys because I've got 2 young children, and I know the toy market for the ages of 2 to 7 years old. And knowing that information helped me be able to find products that would sell. I started that way on eBay, and I transitioned that to Amazon. The shiny object syndrome is really real. I still feel that sometimes, and I've been doing this for 4 years, and I have to step back and go, wait, does that make sense for my business model? I really think that the best thing you can do is to pick an avenue, pick a product line, even if it's that simple, and focus on that until you figured it out and mastered it. I'm not saying you have to do everything perfectly and not expand beyond that before you're comfortable with it, but at least understand what you're attempting to do and coming up with a process. Because if you start going in every which avenue, you're going to overwhelm yourself, you're going to use up your capital, and then you're going to go bankrupt because you have nothing left.
I agree with you. And you know, the next section of the book is dealing with inventory. And I think that that's such an important piece. I think it's another place people can get really stuck because it is easy to go out and buy things. It is not easy to manage those things. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. I know that one of my struggles early on was making sure that the product that I bought was good product, using the tools that I had to make good buying decisions. And as you do it longer, the better you get. But as in anything, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have errors in judgment. That's part of the learning process. You know, failure is part of success. It's not the opposite of success. I forget who said that. But I've fallen on my face more times with bad inventory buys. I learned from them and I moved on. You know, I stuck my foot into wholesale for the first time last year and fell on my face. So I said, okay, I'm going to go back to the arbitrage way of things and reevaluate that next year.
You know, I think that's sound advice too. I had Darla Flack not that long ago, and she's into clothing and stuff, and her advice was, depending on the category, you've got to be really cautious. Buying 1 or 2 or 3 units is all you really want to do when you're in the clothing category. You want to be very careful not to go deep in those categories. Let's talk specific categories, say health and beauty or toys. I guess toys is a little bit tougher one, but let's just say in health and beauty. What's your recommendation for people who, hey, got approved in health and beauty, and Amy talks about that in her book about getting approved in certain categories. But let's talk specifically. What do you recommend for that type of category? Makeup. Not that I use it.
Not that I use it either. Not that much of it, at least. Understanding what you're buying, understanding the guidelines that go along with it. Amazon has a great bunch of information in Seller Central that helps you understand what you're allowed. There's a lot of things in the makeup category that are considered meltable, and understanding what that means and when you can and can't sell it on Amazon. Making sure you understand what you're selling before you even go to sell it. Is it restricted? Is it a brand restriction? All those types of things I talk about in the book to make sure that you understand what you're selling before you actually sell it.
I think that's just so important. Do you address the issue of inventory levels that you really want to maintain?
I don't talk as much about inventory levels. I think that inventory levels are something that depends on your business model and your capital level. I've kept my inventory levels are relatively low compared to a lot of the mega sellers you hear about, and I do that on purpose. My business partially funds the bills of my household, and because of that, I have to be very cautious of what I buy, the quantities I buy in, and how much inventory I hold. Because if I've got $100,000 worth of inventory sitting in the warehouse that's not selling or won't sell yet, well, that's money that I don't have to pay the bills of my family. So I have to factor that in. And everybody's different. Everybody's business model is different.
I think it was Kristen who gave me the advice. It was really, really well thought out. They took a paycheck right from the beginning. And so when they got low on funds, they had to make smarter buys. One of the negatives of when you're sitting on a boatload of cash is you feel like you got to spend it. Keep turning it, right? Keep turning it. And you start to let your guard down a little bit. And all of a sudden the buys, well, I could do it that margin. Well, that rank, I know it's high, but I got a feeling it's going to come in. And I think that could happen. And I think what you're describing is, hey, keep it lean and mean, and tight, and you'll have much more success.
Definitely. You really need to pay attention to, there are so many different business models out there. There's the fast turns, there's the long-term holds, there's the wholesale. There's all these different aspects that you need to find the right balance for you. Now, I do a mix of a variety of different things because that's what works for my business. And it's taken me a while to figure out what that is. And Kristen has actually helped me walk through a lot of how to set up the financial end of my business so that I make the smarter decisions. And that has helped me really take my business to the next level. I'm in a very different place now halfway through 2015 than I was at the end of 2014.
It's pretty darn exciting, isn't it?
It is.
And the next section, you talk about product processing. I think this is another place that people don't understand and underestimate some of it, bagging, tagging, and all that jazz, removing stickers. I think people underestimate, it's no big deal. Well, when you're scaling, when you want to try and get past that $10,000 mark a month or $20,000 mark, it's very difficult. So you have to make smarter decisions. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
You have to make smarter decisions about how you process, the number of times you touch an item. I'll give an example there. At the end of last year, I'm the only person right now who touches my inventory, and, well, that's not completely true. I have a processing facility that does it now too, but then I was the only person touching it, and I sat down at the end of 2014, and I realized I touched my inventory way too much. And part of that's because of the current process, the process I had set up at the time. And I was still using 30-up labels at that point and putting things, touching too much, too many times. And I sat down and I ran the numbers and said, I need to change what I'm doing. And that's when I switched to Inventory Lab, and I haven't looked back. This is part of what the processing talks about is looking at all the different elements of the products you are selling or looking to sell and see what the process you need to put in place, all the different factors, the drop tests, the expiration date, and all the different steps that those different things add to your processing to see if something is really worth what you're going to get in the end.
I love it. You can't underestimate how much details, depending on what category, what type of product, all those things, they all have different nuances, I guess I should say. And so I know you address them. And then finally in the book, you talk about that first shipment, and there's that wonderful moment. So give us a little bit about that.
The first shipment, for whatever reason, for a lot of people, it is a sticking point in their business. They know that Amazon can be this great thing. It has a lot of potential. But that first shipment, Amazon has a lot of rules, a lot of guidelines, a lot of ways to do things. Not saying that eBay or Etsy or other platforms don't. It's just Amazon is Amazon. It's this big, huge thing. And that's a little bit scary. The nice thing about the last chapter in the book is I take each one of those fears as you go through, and I help you understand it and take that fear out step by step.
Love it. So this is a great segue, because my next question is about fear. Did you have a fear? So here you are looking at, let's just point where we're at, right? We're starting to get ready to approach Q4 2015. A year ago, you had no clue you'd be this far along, but now you are a published author. Your sales have grown exponentially. You really had a great year. You had a good year last year. You were having a spectacular year this year. And did you have a fear at some point that, maybe I'm just going to throw it all in, this just doesn't seem to be working, I can't get past the point of stuck? Or are you just so determined you're going to figure it out?
I don't let myself get stuck. It's one of my strengths, because if I feel that something's not working, I go, okay, what's not working? Why am I freaking out about this? What's not taking me to where I need to be? And if that's I have to backpedal and take a different direction, like with the wholesale blunder last year, or is it something I just need to reevaluate? And, I wasn't, for example, with my blog, there's only, it's a slow growth. And what do I need to do to change that? Okay, I'm not going to give up because I'm not getting the viewership that I want. Okay, how do I find that viewership? How do I take the next step? I don't like to move backwards. I like to go forwards.
Would you say that is your biggest strength, too?
Yeah, I'm a go-getter.
Okay. What's your biggest weakness? What's the weakness? Give it. Come on.
I don't know how to relax. One of my biggest challenges is do nothing is not in my vocabulary. I don't have the ability to sit back and not do. I'm always doing something. Drives my husband nuts. He's like, just sit and watch TV. I'm like, I can't. I need to be doing something with my hands. I need to do something all the time. And in reality, I find a lot of that doing relaxing for me, whereas my husband would rather sit and watch a football game or read a book. That's not enough for me. To truly relax, I need to be doing something.
Are you using any? So your mind's jumping around, right? You're shooting ideas everywhere in your mind. Shooting them down, shooting them up, whatever. Are you using any tools to track that? I've heard people say, "Hey, keep a notepad next to your bed, so when you wake up, you can write down those great ideas." And that, or my son uses a program called BeMinder, and he uses that to help him meet his goals and keep him on task. Anything that you're using?
I have a couple different things. I journal, and I don't journal daily. I journal when I need to. That's one way I do it. I also use an app called Nozbe, Nozbe. It is an excellent task management app. It allows me to manage tasks by projects. That's been hugely helpful, especially with the addition of buying and selling a house this year, to add all of those things and be able to sit down in a day and go, these are the 10 things I need to do for these variety of different projects. I also use Evernote quite heavily, especially with when I find things that I want to remember or ideas I want to reference later. Oh, that's a great product. I want to sell that next Q4 because it sold really well this Q4 for somebody else. I want to remember that.
So, I've heard people say that. So give me an example. So you're in a store, you're at Target, and you see a particular item, or you sold this particular item and it went really well this year, and you realize, hey, next year I want to do that. So walk us through the process. How do you do that?
Well, if I have an item, for example, I had one I sold last year that I created the listing for and sold really well throughout all of Q4. I took note of all of the ASINs that were part of that. I have all of the Keepa graphs, camel, all of that on my pages, so that I did a screen grab, not even a screen grab. I printed a PDF so that it printed the entire page with all of the detail. It told me where the rank was and all of that information, so that next year, which is actually in 2 weeks, when I sit down and look at all of the stuff that I sold during Q4 last year, I can sit down, I know where the rank was, what sold, why it sold, and it's all sitting there in a folder.
And so you're going to pull that out this year, and you're going to say, okay, these, and now, maybe this is a great way to think about it. You now have a building block, or blocks, I guess each one is a building block, to start your fourth quarter building on. And think of where you were last year. You had nothing. So that's really going to set you up for success. That's really well thought out.
I found that for each holiday or each major part of the year, I've started doing that, and I do it for stuff that I've sold. I do it for things that I see other people selling that have sold well and go, oh, I want to jump on that idea next year. Or I want to do something similar to that, but I want to bundle it this way. It gets the creative juices flowing of how I can take that and apply it to my business model.
That's great. And I think, what comes to mind for me is you can have 20,000 SKUs that each sell, right? Or you can have 100 or 200 SKUs that you sell multiple versions of. That's a lot easier to manage.
Totally agree.
Okay. Well, we're almost to the end. Any podcasts or books that you're listening to or reading that you can recommend to our listeners?
One of the ones that really helped me, and I'm glad it's coming back, is the Thrifting for Profit podcast with Charlene Anderson and Deborah Conrad. That one really helped me jump into the world of FBA. They have so many golden nuggets in their archives. They're going to be coming back. They're starting to do it again, which makes me really excited because they're a great pairing and lots of great information comes out of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've listened to them many times, and it's just really, just great stuff, solid advice and experience. Again, there's somebody who's done it, and they're giving you a chance to take a shortcut and learn with them. So, okay, so we're at the end of the podcast, and what the goal of the podcast is to help people move forward. So we've already said that if you're brand new to FBA, if you've never seen it and you're thinking about it, especially if you've been selling on eBay or Craigslist or Etsy, and you're looking for another channel and you're looking to grow but you don't have time, FBA is probably the way to go, because Amazon, for a fee, don't get me wrong, they're not cheap, but they will do a lot of the work for you. And so immediately, the first recommendation we have to move you forward is, here's a book you can start, and it gets you right from basics, and it just takes you right through the steps of getting that first shipment out. Okay, it's really designed for new sellers. I think it complements very, very well with what Amazon has free videos out there that just started, and I think they complement each other very, very well. But now I want to take and move even experienced sellers forward. So give us a really good tip for us, Amy.
Mine is to touch your inventory less. Now, this goes for anybody at any level of the spectrum. I know that you spoke to this at Momentum, is sit down and look at your process and find out either where your sticking points are or where you touch your inventory too many times and take a piece out or reevaluate that process. Part of the reason we went shopping for a house this year was because my process is, in my current location, inherently broken, because I have a big, huge pile of inventory that sits on top of an 8-foot table in the middle of my living room. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. There are certain products that I can't currently source because if I brought them in my house, they would never leave. And so I think it's important for everyone to look at their process and evaluate it, and not just on an annual basis, regularly, because as you grow, your process needs to grow with you.
I think it's a great sound advice. Identify the sticking points. So touch your inventory less. Sit down and take a look at your process. Identify those sticking points is her advice. Find them. They're there. We all have them. And if you can eliminate them, as you mentioned, you're using an outsourced company to do some inventory processing for you. Obviously, that's helping you get past wherever your point is. And so each person has those. But if you can identify every time you touch a transaction and then sit back and say, does that transaction add value? Or as Ryan Grant would say, the minute it costs me $10, I can pay somebody $10 an hour to do that work, I'm doing it because my time is more valuable than that. I just think that's great, solid advice. Now, Amy, how can we find out more information about you?
Well, you can find me at amyfeierman.com. That's my blog, my website. You can also find me on www.azfbalaunchpad.com. That will take you to my book launch page, which tells you all about Amazon FBA Launchpad.
Okay.
Also on Facebook as well.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I cut you off there. So we can get you at amyfeierman.com. That's the blog. And then FBA Launchpad.com. And that's the book. And then on Facebook, you're available to answer questions if somebody has them?
I'm available to answer questions. You can usually find me in most of the Facebook groups. In Scanner Monkey, I am on the Facebook Amazon Newbies group that Bob Wiley runs. And yeah.
And you're on Mommy Income
I am on
with Kristen, right? You're an administrator there, too, and you're very active in that, too. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're busy with 2 little ones, so I really appreciate you taking the time for coming out tonight. And I think this is a great place that people are going to get a lot of value from.
Well, thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks for listening to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. All the links mentioned today can be found at ecommercemomentum.com under this episode number. Please remember to subscribe and like us on iTunes.